Welcome to Lightways at Life Astrologer with me, Anna Isabel, and Mary English. Hello, Mary.
Hi, Anna. How are you?
I am well, and I'm really excited because your book has finally come out, Neptune in Pisces, an astrological search for enlightenment. So, and the perfect color for Neptune as well. So I thought maybe I'd let you talk a little bit about why you embarked on this book in the first place.
Well, what set me into the idea of doing it is because I'm a Pisces and I'm ruled by Neptune. So there's already an affinity with this particular planet in my sign of the zodiac. The thinking behind it was that it's not going to happen again in my lifetime, that Neptune's going to transit through the sign of Pisces. I might as well make the best of it. And so what I originally did was tackled it a little bit like a homeopathic proving. So just bear with me on this one for a minute. All homeopathic remedies are trialed out on healthy human volunteers. So they give the remedies to them to see what will happen. So they were the people that, the guy, Samuel Hahnemann, the man that discovered homeopathy, was the first person to do clinical trials. He gave samples of the stuff that he wanted to know what would happen to healthy human volunteers, and the symptoms they produce is then what homeopathy will cures like. And so I've done 8 of those. I know how they work. And so I felt I wanted to do was tune in, and you say the word tune in, that sounds just so wacky, but I wanted to concentrate on that one planet, even though there's 10 that we use in astrology. I wanted to concentrate on that for, at first, I thought I'd do 30 days. No, it took me more than a year. So I thought I'd concentrate on it for 30 days and just see what happened. I had no idea when I started what would happen. So I keep a journal anyway, but for the purposes of this book, I kept a journal on my computer and would write about what was happening and just to determine whether or not I was, because I wanted to sort of, in the sense, hear the voice of Neptune. What is Neptune trying to tell us? What's it trying to tell us now it's in the sign of Pisces? What was Neptune's story? And the only way to do that was to sort of, I was meditating. I got halfway through the proving and I started meditating, which I've never done before. and that was what led me to want to do it. So it's a record of my personal experience of that planet, and it got really near to my sun. It still is near to my sun sign, into my Mercury, and at one point it was in between the two of them, because I've got sun at, I don't know, 15 degrees, I think it is. Oh no, yes, sun 15 degrees Pisces and Mercury something like 24. And so Neptune came past both of those and ended up in between the two. Is that right? Have I got Neptune?
Yeah,
Mercury.
yeah, you do. You do. And in fact, you're just coming to that Mercury point. It hasn't happened yet. But the other thing that I noticed, of course, is that you have a sun-moon square. And so you're talking about that midpoint between the sun and Mercury, but the moon's not, I don't think it's far off that midpoint as well. So, in degree, so that square would be happening. So essentially, you've experienced 2 Neptune transits, and you're not finished the Neptune phase yet, because it should be finishing with the conjunction. Sorry, I was just checking, are there any other squares or oppositions that I've missed here? But you haven't finished this phase because it should be finishing with the conjunction to Mercury.
Which will be a double whammy. I'm not there yet. Yeah.
No, but I was just thinking the very first Neptune transit that you received would have been the opposition to Pluto. And then that was followed by the trine to Neptune. Then a little bit of a calm sea until the conjunction to the sun. So what did happen when it conjuncted your sun? And, it is the search for enlightenment. Do you feel more enlightened?
I don't feel less enlightened. I understand what enlightenment is now, which I probably didn't do before. And I was also quite focused on the fact that when I was in my early 20s, I accidentally starved myself and didn't have a job, and my life sort of fell apart. And I had a mystical, what I'd call a mystical experience. And I wondered whether or not it would give me some more insights in that. It wasn't the same thing at all. Okay, because I wasn't starving myself this time. And I didn't re-experience what I experienced then. But it's on the same sort of level. And Neptune is such a funny thing to be able to describe anyway, what's it all about. But then, you know, lots of Neptunian things have been happening, all the migrants, all the people drowning in at sea, you know, all of these things were going on while the book was progressing. It wasn't, I didn't imagine it as a book as such. I imagined it as my personal experience of then what would I do with it afterwards once I kept the journal, yeah. And Neptune, when it got near to my sun sign, the first 3 weeks of me writing it down is exactly what happens in Approving. The first 3 weeks, everybody's happy, and then you get to week 3, when you get to 3 of anything, we get to week 3, you sort of start to lose the plot. And then you're part of Neptune then. So then it got really difficult for me to do anything other than record how I felt. I know all the astrology because I'm aware of that, but just like, well, what was going on for me? And the weirdest of weird things started happening. I started getting clients that have got Neptune things, and people were walking through the door then, they don't do that now. And working with people that have got Neptune things, Neptune conjunct this, Neptune. And during the writing of the book, a little girl, a Pisces girl who was born with Sun conjunct Chiron, she passed away during the transit. So it was all about overwhelm as well, you know. Obviously her parents were dreadfully upset. She was born with a life-limiting condition, and they knew she wouldn't live for, well, they were hoping she'd make it to a much older age, but I think she only managed 3.5 years. So her chart is in the book. So that was what was going on as well. And then the incident of the person who turned up rather inebriated on my doorstep and fell into my office, onto my office chair, and I couldn't get rid of them. There was nothing I could do, and they weren't conscious, you know. So if those weren't Neptune things, it don't work. And then I had the dream, you know, the dream about the world ending, then bing, the pandemic started. That was an extra weirdness. So it wasn't normal.
No, I think that it's a very interesting thing that you've done. I think back to Neptune transits that I had, and the very first that I can remember was a Neptune conjunction to my moon. And I think that was just fun. It was just fun. I was very young. I would have been, I'm just trying to think how old I would have been, 17, 18, no, around 18, 19. And hang on, 1920, that makes more sense. And what I would say is that...
What sign's your moon in?
Capricorn.
Oh, that was in the 90s then.
Yeah. So it was, I would say that I lost myself a little bit, not in a bad way. I mean, I didn't go off the rails, you know, it's a moon in Capricorn after all. I didn't go off the rails in that sense. But what it did was it brought a touch of sparkle to my life that hadn't been there before. And I discovered, I said I lost myself a little bit, and I did, but I also discovered parts of me that I didn't know I had. And so I look back on that transit very fondly. Themes of sacrifice, you know, featured highly as well when I think back to it. Enlightenment, no, zero. But it was, I think, means the self-discovery. The enlightenment came through the squares. When, the squares are the ones, when it squared my sun particularly, and it was a phase that lasted many years, because after it squared my sun, then
it was when it's going through Aquarius, yeah?
It was going through Aquarius. So it squared my sun, it squared my Mars, it squared my MC. Actually, Aquarius, Pisces. There's the beginnings of Pisces as well, because I'm late Taurus. So then it went through to my Mars, my midheaven, and it ended with my Mercury. I remember the start of the sun one, and I remember actually saying, I feel like I'm drowning and I can't find a life raft.
That's all Neptune stuff, drowning water, isn't it?
And I, for the only time in my life, I didn't like to be by the sea too much. And I love the sea, and I don't ever want to be away from the sea for very long. I yearn for it. I miss it. So it's an incredibly different thing to be experiencing a situation where water was no longer something that I sought. It was something that I wanted to keep a distance from. So that's how it started. And then it just got better and better and better. And what made it better was discover or reconnecting. That's not the right word. A deepening of my spirituality and going deeper in understanding it and redefining it, refining it. And that's when I started meditating, by the way. That's when I started meditating. And so I'm not at all surprised that you've ended up meditating.
Yeah, I only do 5 minutes. Moon in Gemini. I'm not going to do it for long. I'm going to get bored with my brain. But I managed to do it during the transit. And it wasn't something I started out wanting to do. I just did. Because I didn't know what was going to happen. When you do a proving, you don't know what's going to happen. You just leave it up to the remedy to speak. And it was the same thing with this. But because in my chart, so my Neptune transit, I'm experiencing that. So when it went through Capricorn, I gave birth. So my sun has got the conjunction of Neptune and Uranus, so the indigo generation. So that was in the 90s. And that was the first time that Neptune had conjuncted anything in my chart. Yeah, because I've got I've got a couple of planets in Capricorn. So that was my first experience of it. And then while it was going through Aquarius, it was okay. It was all right. I mean, I lost a mum and my sister and stuff when Neptune was transiting through Aquarius. It's in my 6th house.
Yes, and it would have conjuncted both your Mars and Venus at that point.
Yeah. And then it started to transit through Pisces, and it had already been going through for quite a few, I think it'd been already 3 or 4 years or something before I started the record of it. I just sort of thought the people that had been born with that, I mean, this little girl, for instance, she was born with Neptune conjunct, and not quite conjunct sun sign, but Neptune in the sign of Pisces, and she was a Pisces, she had sun conjunct Chiron. And so she was born in it and living it, and there's me now living through it. I just didn't want to, when you sort of think, oh, I wish I'd done this. I didn't want the wasted opportunity. But I understand now that Neptune transiting through different signs operates differently. It does different things, and in its own sign now, it's doing exactly what it was born to do, so to speak, because it's more of the truth of the planet with it being in Pisces. That's my observation.
So the question that has just cropped up in my mind is, okay, so let's backtrack a little bit. If we take it that the sun symbolizes who we are meant to become, the person that we are growing into. And we see the moon as being something that's more instinctual, that's kind of where we are coming from. And I think the meditation is a good example of this. This is going to be a lengthy question, sorry. What I'm thinking is, Moon in Gemini, and you just said, I can only meditate for 5 minutes. But you're not meant to be a Gemini, you're meant to be a Pisces. And it feels as though, I guess what I'm asking is, do you feel that Neptune conjuncting your sun in Pisces is pulling you more towards that Piscean energy that you were born to be?
Yeah, but I'm a reformed Pisces, so it's not making me do all those daft Pisces things, losing the plot, losing my job, being ill, dying. You know, Pisces stories can just a sign of martyrdom. And I jokingly say I'm a reformed Pisces because I don't want to suffer from all the typical Pisces things. And then there's the positive sides of Neptune and Pisces. The positive side of Pisces is that they're intuitive, maybe a bit more inspirational, maybe empathic, those types of things. And obviously you have to take into account what house is everything in. As you know, I use equal house, but I have got sun in the 7th, regardless of what house system you use. But okay, Mercury might be in a different house with Placidus. But with I hear what you're saying about the moon. And is Neptune making me more of a Pisces? Yeah, actually, but in a good way. I just don't want to give time to things that aren't, what's the word now? Because then you get into the argument with Pisces, like, what is reality? Thankfully, I have cardinal planets in my chart. I've got Saturn and Jupiter in Capricorn. Praise the Lord. I've got Saturn in its natural home. I'm really happy about that. Love that. Saturn in Capricorn. I can do grounded, but I don't want to be away with the fairies either. And this was the dilemma during the writing of the book, the recording of it. I didn't want to go into that Pisces place of the world doesn't exist and I'm just here with nature. I'm taking the piss out of myself now. Do you know what I mean? I didn't want to go to that place and lose the reality of I have to feed the dog and take her for walkies and I have to talk to my husband and be a normal human being.
You're negotiating with the gods. That's you're saying, hang on a minute. Okay, I'm going to play along with you. I'm going to come swimming, but I want to see the land still. Yeah. That's what you're saying. Are you allowed to do that?
I don't know. I think I managed it in some ways. I mean, there are other Pisces people that I was studying while I was doing it as well. So Anita Morjani wrote the book Dying to Be Me. I don't know what her ascendant sign is, but I do know that she's a Pisces with moon in Gemini like myself. Okay. And I think she's only a few years in age different to me, but she had a near-death experience. And she's very much now, having spent a life in a regular world, now gone into the mystical world in a heavy, deep way. But I come the other way around. I spent a long amount of time in my childhood being away with the fairies, working in retailing, not doing a particularly marvelous job, but making a living, but not living on the world enough until I became a mother. And then it's boom, now I have to feed someone else and be responsible for them. A big responsibility being a mother.
Do you think you're actually afraid of Neptune energy?
Some of it, yeah, because it's weird.
Well, it's the stormy sea, isn't it? And you could drown, which is, I think, what I was feeling when I was going through that myself as a square. I was feeling like I could drown and I need a lifeboat or something. And I haven't got a life raft and I haven't got anything to hang on to. But the funny conclusion that I came to was, if I just stop trying to fight this, I'm going to float.
Mm. And that's what you're supposed to do. If you fall in the river, in fact, loads of people fall in the canal. Our canal just that haven't had touch wood any for a while. But if you fall into cold water, don't try and swim, because you'll just sink. You just float. Just turn yourself over onto your back and float as well as you can. That's all you can do. If you try and swim, it's too cold, it won't happen. The shock of it, blah, blah, blah. And that was it. It was doing it. It was, you could quite easily, and overwhelmed. That's the other awful thing, you know, when clients come to a consultation, sometimes if they're suffering with some sort of Neptune thing going, they just feel totally overwhelmed. And clients with a Pisces ascendant will get that doubly so. People with Pisces ascendant or Pisces moon and Neptune transiting over it, it's like, well, what do I do now? There's just overwhelm. And like you say, it's just keep your head above water for as long as possible. Because when there's been loads of flipping retrogrades with this, but I think we're just coming to the end of a retrograde just a bit at the moment. But while I was doing the book and while I was going through the process of trying to understand the planet, what I didn't want to do is to be overwhelmed by it. So it's very strange to keep a record of something as an astrologer and allow someone else's voice to come through you, so to speak, because that was what I was aiming for. And it was awful. You know, we went to the beach one day to Suffolk, where my husband comes from, Ipswich. We went to the beach, and there was where the shoreline comes up and the tide. And I looked, ooh, and then I looked closer, and it was teeny weeny little bits of plastic were on the shoreline, little bits of plastic that will be there forever. And of course I'd read about it, you know, I'm reasonably up on Save the Planet, but when I saw it with my own eyes underneath my own feet, I felt awful. I felt sorrow, you know, because this is the sea and we're killing the sea. And I was getting all worked up about that as well. What got to do, you know, I'm never going to have plastic in my house ever again. You do as much as you can. And those things became a big concern about the sea itself. And then obviously all the migrants and people, they're not migrants, people traveling via the sea, that their lives are being lost as well. That was really uppermost, still is uppermost because it's still happening. And then boom, then we have the pandemic. I'm not going to go into the pandemic yeah, because everybody's talking about, but it was the overwhelm thing. You have to be careful with Neptune. It's very easy to be overwhelmed, and in a state of overwhelm, then you can't do anything. You can do nothing, so all you can do is just toodle along. And that's what I'm recording, the toodling along of what went on for me.
Listening to you, because you were talking about, you know, not wanting to be away with the fairies, and I asked you, are you afraid of Neptune? I think maybe the question I should be asking is, are you afraid of losing yourself through Neptune?
Yeah. Yeah. But I know that I won't. That doesn't stop it from being a worry.
Yeah. Because that's the thing, isn't it? With Neptune, it is that question of what is real and what isn't. And I think my survival strategy for that, was it a decade? I don't know.
It's 14 years in each sign.
Yes, but for me, I think it was about a decade of a phase where it wasn't squaring something every year, but it was on, if it wasn't squaring something, it was on its way to squaring something, if you see what I mean. So I wasn't clear of it for quite a long time. And I think my survival strategy was say yes. Just go with it. No matter what it is, say yes. And the easiest times were when I said yes, because that was the equivalent of letting myself float.
Okay.
And the rewards were huge for letting myself float. That's when the magic happened. And then I didn't have to worry about, you know, what's real, what's not real. It doesn't matter, because there's a whole bunch of stuff I don't know. And I don't have to understand all of it. I just have to allow myself to float in the world of possibilities. And I think when I did that, that was the brilliant thing. When it was difficult was when I was struggling against it.
Oh yeah, struggle doesn't get you anywhere, but
Because
we will struggle. Yeah.
It's struggling against it. That was where it was really difficult. That was exhausting and it was a road to nowhere. But when I floated, and I think I floated for most of it, because I think I got that message quite quickly, it then turned into some of my favorite transits, were these Neptune squares. It's not to say that I wanted to go there again, but I have a tremendous fondness, respect, gratitude for the lessons that came to me at that time. And that's the thing. So I guess maybe then, I'm teasing you almost with this question. Do you feel closer to God?
It depends what you call God.
I
don't think I'm any less.
This question.
Because God implies some bloke up there with a furry beard and long hair and Jesus. And don't forget, I was brought up in a Catholic family, so I know all about that. I don't think I've ever felt any closer or less close to God, because you have to be very careful what your definition of God is. Yeah. Do I feel I'm any closer because of the transit, or do I feel I'm any closer because I'm older, or do I feel any closer because I've read some flapping many books about it and thought about it and whatever? I don't think there's an answer to that. I don't feel I'm any further away. I don't feel like I've lost that. Astrology has definitely allowed me to connect with whatever God might be. Yeah. Seeing the cycles of things, seeing the bigger picture rather than the teeny weeny things. Astrology allows us to do that. Higher forces.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the beauty. Because you see, I'm thinking about you as a Pisces, and I'm thinking about the religious education that you would have received. And for many people, religion becomes a barrier to divinity, a barrier to God. And so, when we're talking about what's real, what's not real, I think for you as a Pisces, and part of that journey of being a Pisces is discovering divinity and what it means to you. And we all, well, many of us have that journey. But I think with Pisces, it's the life plan. It's kind of, by the way, when you come in, these are the questions you're going to be looking for. These are the things you're going to be looking for. These are the questions you're going to be asking. And so you come in and you come into this religious education, and it doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like the right path to divinity. And so then there are
but it is for some. I'll stop you on that one. It does. That some people can do the Catholic thing and they're right there with God. I mean, I've got relatives that have, and born again this and that and whatever. And my mother was a convert. My father was born into it. And people can find their place that way. But I don't want a second-hand contact with divinity.
That's what I'm talking about, is your personal experience. And when you're a Pisces, I think you have to feel it out. It's that word, isn't it? You have to feel it out. And so you kind of go through that journey and you go, no, that doesn't feel like the right path to find the divine. And so then you might get lost along the way. And then you kind of think, oh, so, and then Neptune comes along and knocks on your door and goes, I need a room for a while. And you go, and he says, oh no, it's not an option. I'm coming in.
Yeah.
It's not an option. And so I'm left with the question, do you feel that you are closer to connecting with something that's divine within you?
Yeah, definitely. As Deepak Chopra says, God is a verb, not a noun. It's a doing thing. You know what? And then, you know, what is spirituality? It's a connection to, it's a feeling of connection, actually. I mean, it could be via anything, flat earth, whatever, but it's a feeling of connection to something that isn't describable, but and then you get all the words. You see, the English language isn't very good. But you know, the whole divinity thing, and you know, am I enlightened and all of that? Well, anybody can bloody well get enlightened. If you follow the Deepak Chopra thing, he's just written a book called Mega something, not Mega. He's just written a book. I've got it handy. Anyway, he's just finished. The new book came out, and the Meta-Human is the name of the book. That's it. That divinity is for all of us to have conscious, and it's about consciousness as well. And then that's Dean Radin, who I follow him. So he's done experiments, stuck the electrodes on people's heads. You know what psychic ability? It does exist. There is more than what we have here. And then if you do yoga or meditation or whatever, then you realize that there is the collective consciousness that we can all tap into. You're trained in hypnotherapy, so you know about that as well, that we can all tap into that. But equally, if we spend all day, because I worked in a drugs detox center for 8.5 years, you've got to keep that in mind, that if you're too away with the fairies, you won't have the joy of the experience of that. So I feel that Neptune's allowed me, I feel honored. I don't know, honor, that's the wrong word. I feel excited that I'm living through that I'm allowing to feel that even more, because it does ramp it up, the Neptune thing. But also to be, and I think the writing, so that's the Moon Gemini, the writing allowed me to make sense of it while it was happening. Yeah. And it might not be for anybody else's benefit. I haven't written the book to promote like the other books are, each sign of the zodiac, learn about your sign and stuff. It was just a little sort of side journey that I made with writing that, but I absolutely wanted to do it, and I thought it was important, and maybe nobody will even be interested in that until the next time that Neptune goes through the sign of Pisces. Oh, what was happening in the 2020s, you know? And I've made a record of it because that's what happened with me.
Just one of the things that you said at the start was you were talking about how, you know, it was very light at first, and then suddenly all you could do was write how you felt. Well, what else would you expect with Neptune? Step out of that moon in Gemini, forget the whole of the left brain view, and immerse yourself in the right brain experience. And I think that that's another way of looking at the Neptune transits, is that it's a very right brain experience. You are in the world of the imagination. You are in the world of the mystical, etc. All of those things that we talk about, and feeling, absolutely the world of feeling. So we could say it's perhaps opening up, you know, the different chakras. Maybe it's opening up the heart chakra. I would think so, because it's Neptune is a higher octave, yeah, of Venus. So it's the love, it's the love again, but at a very much higher level. So yeah, of course you're going to be writing about your feelings. Yeah. And there you are writing about the experience of, you know, this little girl, you know, who's passed at such a, you know, toddler age. It's just such heartbreak, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah. And to be born with a life-limiting condition, and to be told constantly, her parents were constantly told that she won't live. I mean, they said she'd only live months, because there was another little girl that was born about the same time who had the same condition, who did only live months, but her parents worked so hard to allow her to be treated as the person that she was. It was wonderful. Her parents were just like out of this world, how they ensured constantly, because the mother has, I don't think it's Neptune conjunct no, because mum's sun Gemini. I think she's got moon in Sagittarius conjunct Neptune. I think that's right. So mum had a Neptune thing going on. But mum wanted her to be recognized as a person. Okay, Neria was a person, light of God. What a beautiful name to give her, light of God. And that, and I don't want to burble, but my mother wanted her to be seen, because she was quite disabled, wanted her to be seen as Neria, not the child with the life-limiting condition, to be treated as the person that she was. And she treated her as the person that she was. And it was just wonderful. I was not there at the birth, but I was working with the family as a homeopath and also as an astrologer right from the beginning, and pre her even having her, she knew that the child would be born with this. Mum was told that mum's fine, we're going to have the baby. So was dad. They were all on for it. It was lovely. It was absolutely lovely, but it's so sad, but in a beautiful way as well. Mum and dad were there, obviously, when she, well, it might not have been, obviously, but mum and dad were there when she died. And it was again another hard thing to put into words, but I just wrote about it as it happened.
We often think of the word melancholy as linked with Saturn, but I think that there is something of that with Neptune.
Absolutely, because it's a water sign, it's going through a water sign. There's lots of melancholy, there's sadness as well as happiness, and it isn't either or either, what I mean? This is like, it's not black or white or up or down or whatever. There's a deep melancholy in Neptune, because there's the unobtainable, in a sense, wanting to connect with whatever it is, that it seems just nearly there but not, the veil that you're going to get to the other side of. And maybe you do, like in Anita Morjani's case, you've got to die to experience that. Who knows? But I don't think I'd want to practice that one, thank you. But it is sad. And when I saw those bits of plastic on the beach, I was well upset. It was like, I've been to beaches loads, and you've read about it, and then you've actually seen it with your own eyes. Those are bits of plastic, and they're going to be there forever. And that's well sad. And until we recognize the enormity of what's happening with climate change and pollution and stuff, no one's going to do anything about it. But I'm not going to be preaching on that department either. The astrology of it is that we as astrologers aren't going to experience that again. Saturn's going to be in its natural home. The sun's going to be its natural. The moon's going to be there. Pluto has been through Scorpio, not going to do that one again. Uranus has been in Aquarius, not going to do that for another 8 years, and now it's in Taurus. But Neptune's not going to go back to being in the sign of Pisces for another 100 and something, whatever years it is, on however a long time. I think it's 170 years, but don't quote me. So that's quite a few generations. And I think us as astrologers now need to recognize it, and maybe allow some of it, especially when it comes to the sea and the oceans, to be observed and not allowed to be ruined.
So what about sacrifice? Because that's another Neptunian theme. Yeah. So do you feel that you have had a call to sacrifice anything?
Well, I gave up my practice at the beginning of the book. I wasn't going to be a homeopath anymore. I'm retired. I'm not going to practice anymore. And then I had to.
Have you retired?
No, I've officially retired. I announced it. I said I wasn't going to see any more patients. I just see the ones that find me now, rather than proactively promoting. So that's on the homeopathy side of things. Yeah. So I'm still licensed and insured and trained and so I can still safely see people. But at the beginning of the transit, that was what I thought I needed to do, because I just thought I'm getting on a bit. You know, if you get on a bit, you might not have all your marbles with you. You might make a wrong prescription or kill your client or whatever. I am joking now, I'm not being serious. So you need to be switched on, because it's different to conventional medicine, and you have to be aware of people's pathology and lots of things. It's not like herbalism. Homeopathy is totally different. It isn't that popular in the UK. It is in India, but not here. And they've tried to get rid of it. And one part of me didn't want to practice anymore because of the skeptics, and the other part of me, well, I spent 5 years training in it. And I do know that homeopathy in the right place at the right time is very beneficial for people. So at the beginning of the book, and at the beginning of the experience, I am not going to practice anymore. I have finished. And then pandemic happened, and
So
I had to
what
go
do
back
you
to it.
think that in a Neptune transit, you would be allowed to stop serving?
Pardon? Say it again.
What made you think that during a Neptune transit, you were going to be allowed to stop serving others?
What made me think that? I don't know.
It just makes me smile, because it's just, I can't see that right in the Neptune transit, the planet that requires that we sacrifice ourselves for the benefit of others, that you, a healer, which is a Neptune thing, and being a Pisces, we're going to be allowed to say, you know what, I think I've had enough now. I'm going to enjoy life and stop being a healer. Sorry, but the mere concept is making me laugh.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It obviously didn't work, did it? Because it reminded me that I needed to, because the bits about it that I didn't like weren't the bits that were important. And it was when because I've been practicing a long time, it's more than 20 years. And in the right place at the right time, it's a suitable thing. But the reason I wanted to stop was I felt tired.
Yeah.
Tired of not the clients, tired of, it isn't easy, homeopathy. There's a lot of books and work, and you've got to use your brain, and it's not intuitive either. It's not like having a psychic reading or whatever. You've got to look up the remedy. You've got to get a repertory out. You have to write pages and pages of notes. You have to everything about the person, from the weather they like to the food they've eaten to when's the best time of day for them. You have to find all of this out. You might use a computer program. You might use a bit of paper. You have to do things called rubrics and match them up and then weight it. It's like, well, this remedy covers most of it, but not everything. So you need to get all of the person's symptoms, match them up to the remedy, like cures, like match, and then in the right potency, and then the right amount of tablets. And it's a lengthy process, but it's not, it is about healing the person, because they're getting to their core. They're getting to, because the only reason I got into homeopathy is that I'd used it. It was wonderful. All my allergies went. I was in my third year of college or whatever, and I was camping, and I opened, first year, big pardon, at the second college was that, so it's actually my second year. I opened the tent. It was grass outside. I'd hay fever all of my life. I'd been treated homeopathically. Suddenly occurred to me, oh my goodness, I haven't got hay fever anymore. Oh my God, it worked. But it wasn't like I woke up one day and I felt like I was healed. It only was I was in the place where it would have set my symptoms off, a field. I was grass pollen allergic, that opened the tent. That my nose isn't running, my eyes aren't itching. Oh, something worked. So, this stuff does work. Yeah. No, I haven't stopped.
No, it did tickle me, that thought. But I understand, that feeling of being tired. And I think that's also a very Neptune experience.
Yeah.
It's
that was leading up to it.
Exactly.
That was the build up. There was the 3 or 4 years beforehand. Yeah, there was the tiredness of it.
Exhaustion. And I suffered very badly from exhaustion all through. And I can't even tell you why I was exhausted necessarily. I just was. And I think so that's the sacrifice, isn't it? You carried on. You were going to have all this amazing free time, and instead you carried on. And I think that's, do you feel that by having had to consciously make the choice to continue, in a sense, that it has in any way reconnected you with or refined your faith in homeopathy?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I mean, because it's that thing about that, it's a very Neptune thing, whereby somebody will come to me and they will say, oh, I'm really tired of doing this for people. It doesn't have to be a job. It could just be a feeling of, I'm always giving and I never get anything back. And, I feel like, my first question is, well, why are you doing it? And then when they start being conscious, then they're making a free choice. And the thing that I'm working with them on is saying, it's okay to give, as long as you're not going to give anything back, and that's okay with you, because then you're giving freely rather than giving in a vain hope. And if you're giving freely, then it doesn't bother you anymore. And now it's a conscious desire to give. And so I'm wondering whether, having been put in that position where, okay, you're really tired, you don't want to do this anymore, but suddenly you think, no, actually, I do want to do this. I'm going to perhaps change the parameters in which I do it. But I'm going to do it. So do you feel that that's kind of reaffirmed your faith in it?
Yeah, homeopathy isn't, I struggle with the word faith, because it implies that you need to believe in the remedies for it to work, which isn't actually the case, but there we go. It isn't a belief system, it's a medical system. It's not, I say it's not popular in the UK, but it's popular in other countries. There used to be some homeopathic hospitals here, but the skeptics managed to close them down, so we've only got 2 left, Glasgow and London, but that's beside the point. But what the thing about being a practitioner of anything, you have to be self-aware and you have to have supervision. Both of those things that I've got, you also need a bit of counseling skills, etc. But when you're working with people and you're working with their health, it's a totally different thing to an astrology practice. In astrology practice, you might be given an advice, but as a homeopath, you're giving health advice. And you're also supplementing it by giving them some remedies to take that will work with their energy systems and allow them their own bodies to heal. You're not trying to stop anything that happens in the body, because the body is a really clever little thing. The body will fix most stuff, as long as you're not daft and eating too many burgers all the time and you're taking a bit of exercise and you do some meditation or whatever, and homeopathy, for me, I didn't lose faith in it. I wasn't so much tired of it. I just wanted to be sure that I was safe enough to practice. And that was what Neptune was making me question to begin with. Oh, I feel tired with it. I don't know if it's working for people, which it was. But there was a sense of overwhelm with it, because it is a big responsibility when you're advising people with their health. But going through it, then I realized, well, I don't have to be doing brain surgery with people. I'm helping them with everyday, well, not always every day, because some of them are quite life-limiting things, but you're helping people regain their health that they might have had before. And that's just wonderful. I mean, you do it in your hypnotherapy practice as well. You're taking people out of a place of pain, helping people get out of pain. Trust me, is a valuable flipping skill. Any technique you've got that can reduce people's pain is like wonderful.
Exactly. And I did use the word faith very deliberately, because we are talking about Neptune.
Right.
And it does come back to faith, because what you said there that was very telling was, you said, that you were so tired that you were questioning whether, you know, it was working, whether you do it. So it's reaffirming your faith in yourself,
in myself, yes,
and in the potency of what you chose as your tool, one of your tools to help reduce pain. And that's about reconnecting with that moment that you discovered that you were free from hay fever. It's that's a revelation. And that revelation opens your eyes. And yes, I am using religious language. Of course I am. We're talking about Neptune and talking, you know, about you as a Pisces. So we're going to be using exactly those terms. The moments in which your eyes are opening to the potency of a system of healing that's very old, and which is, that's also an act of faith in itself. And so it's that reconnection to that faith which reinvigorates you then and says, yes, actually I can continue, but perhaps there are things that need to be fine-tuned with it. So that's allowing yourself to float. I think that's my feeling, is of allowing it to float, and that's how you avoid the sense of martyrdom.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah, because that's a Pisces thing, the sign of the martyr, isn't it? Yeah, because so many Pisces will say, oh, I didn't want to do this, I didn't want to do that. Well, why are you doing it? Oh, well, I just feel like, you know, because they can continually put themselves in other people's shoes and stuff, so that then they lose their own identity. That's the worst thing about the downside of a Pisces, is they don't know who they are. There's so many people around them that are influencing them so much and in so many different ways, they don't know who they are anymore. Well, I've been through all of that and come out the other side, so
and it's very interesting, because the conclusion I came to, having gone through all these Neptune squares, is that this is a planet that is about not having absolutes, supposedly. And it's a planet that is about potentially illusion. But actually what I felt was that it strips, what I felt was that it was stripping away the rubbish that wasn't really important and showing me what was really important at the heart, at the core, beyond the material stuff. And that was, here's another Neptune word of sorts, a purifying experience. And that, in the midst of the fog, I have found Neptune to be the most clear-sighted of all the transits I've had. And so I've come to the conclusion that it's really a camouflage planet. And that once you see the pattern in the background and it loses its camouflage, then it becomes this very clear light. And then there's so much that's revealed that's of tremendous beauty, which is why I am very fond of the Neptune squares I went through for the most part, even though, as I say, I don't particularly want to revisit. I treasure what it brought me, I think is what I would put.
I think it's better to look back in respect of it.
I knew it was happening when it was happening, and I was really valuing it. I have to tell you, I would not say the same thing for the decade or so of Pluto transits that I went through. That's a completely different ballgame. This is different, and I do treasure it very much. So, well, here we are. I think if people would like to learn more about Mary's experience, and if you are, like her, a Pisces going through these Neptune transits, then the book for you is Neptune in Pisces, an astrological search for enlightenment. Thank you so much, Mary, for sharing that with us today, and for the book as well.
Thank you. And thank you very much for having a read of it and writing me endorsement and, you know, being supportive of my writing. We've talked about a lot of my books. You know, I was looking back, I think it was something mad, like 2011. Is that right? When we
Something
first started? Yeah, it's a long, long, long time ago. And then we chatted about the Sagittarius one, I think it was in 2015, and the Capricorn one and the Aquarius one. But we started with the Pisces one. So it's almost like I've gone full circles. The first time we chatted was about the Pisces book, and now we're chatting about the Neptune and Pisces. Yeah.
Well, I'll be sure to put a link to your book on the description box. And if people wanted to get in touch with you, Mary, how could they do that?
Oh, best place, just wing over to my website. It's maryenglish.com, or you can go .co.uk. Everything's on the website.
Lovely. Thank you once again, Mary.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you all for watching. And if you have any questions, comments, do please feel free to write them. I always read, I always reply. Until next time, goodbye.